Chapter 28. Nate. I've only seen Stevie once since the phone call from Mom as I came home from work, and he completely blanked me, then went out shortly after. I know he's not really annoyed at me. He's annoyed at, well, everything. Mom, her message, the panic it put us through. But neither of us can be annoyed at Mom about it. That's just cruel. So, it's easier to be annoyed with me. Whatever, I'm annoyed with him too. He's acting like a child. We're brothers, we've fought before. But being ignored in a tiny flat which is too small for two regular adults, let alone two men who tower over 6 foot, is a new level of awkward. I knew he wasn't working tonight, and since I still haven't heard back from Annie, I had no choice but to go out, which is what has led me to the theater, squashed next to Remy, who I suspect, much like me, is questioning the life choices he has made that have brought him to this moment. It's not that Aunt Tell isn't good. I mean, she's been a professional actor her entire adult life. You don't get to do that unless you're talented. Look at the size of her house. I think it's more that this may be the most depressing play I've ever seen, and Aunt Tell died in the first 7 minutes. She could have mentioned that when she offered me the tickets, but I do feel like the universe gave me these tickets as a helping hand. Aunt Tell clearly has no intention of speaking too deeply about Mom, so I thought if I did her a favor, saw Tell in the environment where she's happiest, then maybe she know I come in peace. Even though really, I come with quite a stern invitation and an unwavering need to get her to agree to come back to New York. But peace too. I'm trying not to think too hard about how I've screwed things up with Annie. Every time I check my phone, I hope to see a message from her, in her bright, fun voice, so that we can go back to how we were in that club in Clapham. But there's nothing, and who can blame her? I've hardly been a stand-up guy so far, have I? And know I could message her again, but what would I say? I don't want to burden her with all my baggage, not when we had so much fun together. Remy shuffles in his seat and I hide a smile. These seats are way too small for us, and I know this is hardly Remy's idea of a great night out, but he didn't even flinch when I mentioned going. He's a good guy. I jolt to attention as the audience start to clap, and I realize that the play must have come to an end. Aunt Tell takes center stage, throwing her arms into the air before cupping them to her chest and dipping into a deep bow. She gets the loudest cheer of them all. "Thank you for coming with me to this," I say to Remy as thieps fizzle out. The lights come on, and one start hearing the snaps of the theater seats as people get to their feet. Remy raises his eyebrows at me, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I didn't realize you hated squash that much." He groans as he stands and clicks his back. "I definitely owe you a pint," I say. "Do you mind if we stay behind and say hi to my aunt? It won't take long. I said we'd meet her at the bar." Remy nods as we start to pick our way through the crowd. My hand throbs as it drops to my side. It's still wrapped up in layers of bandages. As we walk down the stairs of the theater, I spot that the bar is practically empty as the crowd swarms towards the doors, back onto the icy, quiet streets of a Thursday night. The bartender clocks us as we walk forward, and I can almost see his fight not to roll his eyes at the possibility that his shift won't be finishing in the next 5 minutes. "Is the bar still open?" Remy says, peering over the bartender's shoulder. "Yes," the bartender says, disgruntled. "We close at 11. "Great," Remy nods. "I could do with a drink." "We're just meeting one of the cast members," I explain. "We won't be long, Nathaniel." I look up as the excited voice of Aunt Tell pours through the room like heavy cream. She sashays towards us, her face still thick with show makeup, wrapped in a heavy coat. She throws her arms around my neck, nearly breaking my back as she pulls me down to her level and gives me a huge squeeze. I'm not sure if I'll ever get used to her treating me like her long-lost son, when she's been ignoring me for the past couple of months. "Hi, Aunt Tell," I say as she lets me go. "Well done on the show. You were great. This is my friend, Remy." Aunt Tell turns to Remy and dips her chin. She holds out her hand and he takes it, giving a little bow. "You were fantastic," he says earnestly. "What would you like to drink?" Patches of pink form on Aunt Tell's cheeks, and she shimmies her shoulders in a way I've never seen an adult do. "Oh, champagne, please." Remy doffs his flat cap and turns back to the bartender, who now looks thoroughly pissed at the realization that he'll be working right up until 10:59 p.m. "You enjoyed it then?" Aunt Tell coos, putting a hand on my arm. "You really liked it?" "Yes," I say at once. "You were great." "That bit isn't a lie, at least. You're too kind." She cups her chest, turning to gaze at Remy, who gives her a wink over his shoulder. "Listen," I say, keen to steer the conversation before Aunt Tell is completely swept away by Remy. I spoke to Mom today. Your darling Mom, Aunt Tell cries, her hands back at her heart. How is she? I pause. She's fine, considering she's dealing with early onset dementia. She was asking about you, I say, avoiding the question in order to keep things light. I was thinking maybe you could come back with us at Christmas to visit. Sounds wonderful, she says. But as Remy turns back with her champagne, I can tell she isn't listening. Really, I press on. Shall I book us some flights then? Till just need your passport details. Sure, honey, she says absent-mindedly, her glittering eyes fixed on Remy. So tell me, what did you think of the show? Thought from one foot to the other as the subway rockets around the corner, snaking through the underground passages. Mom called earlier this afternoon, and we ended up chatting my entire lunch break. Everything has slipped back into normal conversation. How are you? How was your day? Was work okay? How's Stevie? I debated messaging Dad, telling him about the message from Mom, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. If he didn't already know, then why would I tell him? All it would do is scare him, and he's scared enough as it is. I know that. I've just run away from it. Guilt hammers under my chest, and I close my eyes for a moment. The train pulls up at Camden, and my eyes open as I knock into the man next to me. I mumble an apology, squeezing my way off the tube to start the quick walk back to the flat. The air is cold, whizzing past my face and leaving speckles of ice behind, ready to nip and pinch at the tips of my ears and the tops of my cheeks. The Londoners are fully buried in their scarves now, with only their narrowed eyes poking out at the top, scanning the sidewalks for any gaps in the crowds that they can skirt through. I weave my way through the throng of commuters, pulling my coat tight to my body. Sure, it's cold, but it has nothing on New York winters. Brian and Helen were chatting excitedly with a few others today about how it might snow at the weekend, but that's one part of England that I haven't been swept away by. You don't know snow until you've been to America. Thop up the final steps of the building and push my key into the lock, giving the door a swift kick to force it open. Hello, I call out, pushing the door shut and unraveling my scarf. Hi, Stevie's voice comes from the kitchen, carried by the splats and crackles of something in the frying pan. Okay, so he is talking to me now. That's something. I drop my bag and walk into the kitchen. Stevie is frying an egg. He looks up from the hob. Want one? I shake my head. Nah, man, I'm good. I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks on me, but Stevie looks thinner than he did a week ago. His eyes are circled by deep, dark rings, and his cheekbones are jutting out under his grayish skin. His mouth is pressed together in a line, like he's fighting desperately not to let out all the angry words that are buzzing inside his mouth. He nods, flipping his egg onto a piece of bread and fall, lowering me into the living room. I saw Aunt Tell the other day, I say, watching closely for a reaction. He scowls, dropping down onto the sofa. Why, Mom talks about her a lot. I shrug. I was hoping I might be able to persuade her to visit her back home. He scrunches up his face, his eyes fixed on the TV. She won't do that, why not? She's too selfish. I focus on the TV as two cheery presenters sit on a sofa and interview a sad-looking elderly man. He glances at me. What have you done to your hand? Ah, I say, looking at my bandage. I punched your light. I get you a new one. He frowns. Are you okay? Yeah, fine. We fall back into silence and I sit down next to him. Are you working tonight, I ask? Stevie shakes his head. This weekend? I press further. He stuffs his sandwich into his mouth as the theme tune for Bargain Hunt starts up and shakes his head again. Did you want to do something? What do you mean? He asks, his mouth full of congealer bread and his eyebrows still scrunched together angrily. I feel myself bristle. Why does he have to be so angry all the time, and with me? I'm just asking if he wants to spend time together. Well, it's Thanksgiving, I say, trying to keep my voice light. They don't celebrate Thanksgiving here. I bite the inside of my cheek, forcing myself to take a deep breath. Yeah, but we do, I say slowly. I could cook us up a Thanksgiving dinner. I can try and make us some yams. Stevie doesn't say anything, but just cocks his head to the side non-committally. We could call Mom and Dad, I continue. We could try and time it so that we eat at the same time and FaceTime them or something. Pretend we're all together. Stevie swallows his mouthful. What's the point? I can felt it now. The hot anger I've been trying to keep at bay bubbles up inside me. What's the point in having dinner? You know what I mean? No, I say flatly, I don't. He glares at me, leaning forward on his elbows. The only light is from the TV, which is flickering madly as the adverts his feet pop through the living room. Forget it, he says, getting to, it's nice to call mom and dad on Thanksgiving because they're our parents. I snap, finally losing control. What's wrong with that? Stevie doesn't answer, walking into the kitchen. But now, the anger is out. I can't control it. It's like everything kept in my bubbling, angry jar for the past month is now free. It's appeling through my body, making the blood under my skin hot and my heart race. No, I say, getting to my feet and following him. Don't walk away from me, Stevie. You have something to say. Say it. What's wrong? Why don't you want to speak to Mom? Because she's not there, he cries, spinning around to face me. You saw her the other day. She put us through hell and then couldn't even remember. There's no point in talking to her. I stare at him, anger buzzing through me. No point, I repeat. No point in speaking to your own mom? He looks at me squarely in the face, and although his jaw is tight and jutted forward, I can see the glimmer of fear behind his eyes. No, he says eventually, dropping his plate on the side with a clatter. There is no point. Stevie, I say you don't mean that. You, team not doing it, Nate, he says, going into his room. Team just not. I open my mouth to reply, but it's too late. He's slammed the door. I spend the rest of the evening sitting on the sofa, watching garbage on TV. Two people scream at each other in EastEnders. A stand-up comedian promotes their new show on a red couch. And finally the somber 10 o'clock news rolls around before I pull myself up off the sofa and into bed. Stevie stays locked in his room, not even coming out to go. To the bathroom, I debate knocking on the door and forcing him to talk to me, but I'm worried what I might say. The red mist of anger still hasn't fully faded from behind my eyes. One wrong thing said or a look thrown in my direction, and who knows what we might end up yelling at each other. As I lie in bed, the weekend stretches before me like an ominous blank page. Stevie will be in, and I'll end up spending half the time locked inside my room waiting for him to go out so I can relax in peace, and the other half sat on the sofa wondering if he's secretly hoping the same. In the end, I message Remy, hoping that he might be at a loose end or wanting some company to watch another football game, but he's up in Leicester for the weekend visiting his parents. I even debate messaging Aunt Tell, but decide against it. I don't want to spend the weekend around her weird, buzzing energy. It's hardly the way I usually spend Thanksgiving after a few hours of wallowing in my own pit of worry and self-doubt. I pull out my phone and do the one thing that Mom and I spoke about doing when I came to London. I Google where the holiday is set and book a return train ticket for the next day. My hand stings and I look down at the bandage still tightly woven around my hand, although a little frayed and peeling away at the edges. I take a sip of my pint. I thought I'd try a Guinness this time. It's not bad, but hardly as delicious as it looks when it's poured and you're made to believe you're about to drink something like thick, creamy hot chocolate. So here I am, sitting in a cozy country pub. It's all a bit waunchy and looks as if a child has given it a big squeeze when all the bricks were still wet. There are flickering yellow lamps and lots of thin bar towels. A gaggle of people are huddled around a dartboard in the corner of the room, cheering every couple of minutes and slapping each other on the back. And there's a glossy black lab stretched out in front of the roaring fire, which is feeding a warm, smoky smell throughout the pub. It only took 2 hours on the train, and as I stared out of the window and watched the world around me slowly get less gray, I felt the chains around my chest loosen too. At one point, I felt so far away from my problems that I nearly let myself message Annie. This time last week, we were about to have our first date together. Well, first, if you don't count the 10 minutes of chat at the Halloween ball. I can't message her now. I mean, what would I say? Sorry I sent such a weird message. I thought my mom was in danger, so I didn't really have any working brain cells to send you a proper message. And then I spent the rest of the week either yelling at my brother or preparing to sell my organs if it meant I could go back home and make sure she's okay. Annie was so fun and carefree last week, and so was, that Nate was fun. Nobody wants to hang out with this Nate. Even I don't want to hang out with him, I sigh, taking another sip of the Guinness. My train arrived at midday, and I've spent the afternoon wandering around the cobbled streets and going into quaint, tiny tea rooms and along paths by flowing rivers. The Cotswolds is not too dissimilar to London, but it's like a version of London with a layer pulled back. Everyone walks a bit slower and smiles at each other. The bartender at this pub asked how I was and seemed quite happy to chat to me when he picked up my New York accent, and even gave me tips on what to see in the area. By this point, it was only a few hours until my train back to London, but I still lapped it all up. Maybe I'll come here again for a proper weekend. I took a crossword from the bar and set myself up by the fire, being careful not to disturb the black lab, whose name I learnt was Bessie, and I've been sat here ever since. It feels quite easy to hide from all your problems when you're sitting in a place like this, where the only thing you have to think about is what 6 down is. 9 letters. Archetype. I take out my phone and send a picture to Mom, being sure to capture the roaring fire in the background and the framed black and white photo of the local cricket team, all proudly resting on one knee and smiling up at the camera. She'd love it here. I'll bring her one day. As I click send, I notice the weather app on the home screen and I start quickly getting to my feet. Shit, I'd forgotten about the snow. Sorry, I say to the bartender, it says it's meant to snow tonight, is that right? He blinks at me as we both silently question why I'm asking him as if he's the weatherman. Think so, he says after a pause. Are you staying here tonight? No, I say I'm going back to London. How? By train. He picks up a glass and starts cleaning it with a rag, looking doubtful. Good luck, feller.